Hello, everybody, welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be looking at the 1025 support tier list. As always, if you enjoy the content, please be sure to like and subscribe. It really helps out a ton on the channel. If you like this, check out the rest of the content as well. We're constantly adding more, so I just released a patch notes video earlier today. I've got this, and then I'm going to do at least an 80 carry tier list video, and I'll probably do a few more as well. I'm also covering some of the new Total War content, so I've got a Skaven campaign going on right now, and then an Empire Marcus Wolfheart campaign going on, and then I am going to start releasing some Cyberpunk as well. I start maybe recording some of that later today, and then I'll just be releasing that over time as well, and then I'm going to pick up and revisit some of the other single player stuff that I was recording that I kind of had to drop off for a little bit in the last month or so to make sure that I was keeping up with my schoolwork. So anyways, because I do teach at a major university, I teach English. So that means we'll be picking up Witcher again and some of the other single player games. Okay, so be sure to like, subscribe, and check all that out if you're interested. We stream every night on YouTube starting around 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, usually go till about 3 a.m. Pretty much just play League all stream if you enjoy League, and then we just do that other stuff on the side. So come by, check it out. Super friendly, chill community. Okay, let's go ahead and get in here. So I think a pretty good amount is going to change as far as the bot lane goes. Now I think ADC is probably going to be the most dramatic change, but I think that support is still going to be pretty strong. So I did release an entire extra patch notes video, but I'm just going to hit just the highlights as it pertains to bot lane just super fast. So and I'll just give you kind of the TLDR. Amumu pretty much gutted with those changes, plus the Sunfire nerfs. Rel, we'll talk about her in a second. I think she's going to come in pretty weak. Interesting kit, but pretty weak numbers. Anivia, don't think it's going to matter too much. Annie's not going to matter. Echo in the jungle, maybe. He's a pretty strong champ. Fizz, not going to matter. Gragas doesn't matter. Irelia doesn't matter. Ivern, interesting. You might see him. If he does start to become more powerful in the jungle, that will make tank supports a little bit better in the bot lane, because you really don't want two different champions building like Ardent Sensors and Staff of Flowing Waters and Redemptions and stuff. It doesn't work very well with each other, and you need someone tanky on your team. So he's never been an ultra popular champion, even when he was really good. So I think this is a huge buff for him. I'll talk about that in the jungle tier list video, but I don't think a lot of people are going to be playing him. And you can't play him as support, really. I thought about it, and I tested out to see if you buy the jungle item first and then complete all of your smites, can you get a ward item after that? The answer is no. Even though the item disappears from your inventory and turns into blue smite, you still can't get a support item. So, because if you could do that, then he might be interesting as sort of a counter jungling support, but as it stands, I don't think so. I mean, maybe with like Rengar or a few other like cheese comps if you practice them really well, but probably not. Jen, probably not going to matter. They did nerf Eclipse as well, so he just might build some different items, but he's still going to be very good. Karthus probably doesn't matter. Kale still going to be really strong. Kane, I'm not sure. He'll be strong, but this is going to take him down a couple of percentage points, 2 or 3 percentage points. Lee Sin, good buffs, probably still not going to be that relevant. Lulu, interesting changes. This is more for solo lane Lulu, where you're getting, a lot of points in queue. Really shouldn't affect support Lulu that much. Mordekaiser, I'm not sure, but probably not that big of a difference. Morgana is not going to matter for support. They're nerfing mid lane Morgana for some reason. Nasus, probably not going to matter that much. Nidalee is going to be a lot stronger at really high level play, like Challenger Plus. But I think in everyday YOLO queue, probably not going to matter that much. Pantheon, massive nerf for the bot lane. He's no longer going to be as strong. So this is going to make squishy champions a lot better. So now you can more safely play enchanters, because he was really good against pretty much all of the enchanters except for Janna. But now he's only invulnerable for 1.5 seconds, even if it's empowered. So he doesn't have the 2.5 seconds invulnerability anymore, and it no longer blocks tower shots. That's the big thing that you need to know. They did give him a little bit more damage kind of built in. He gets some free armor pen, and they put a lot more damage on his W, but if you max his W, that means you're not maxing his E, which is a similar amount of damage. So it's kind of like a fake buff, in my opinion. So I don't know. I think that it's overall going to be a nerf. People might still try him in the bot lane, but I think his trades are going to be a lot worse, especially against tanks. Samira still going to be pretty good. They did dial back her lifesteal, and she no longer adds that extra half a second knockup, except to other knockups. So if you have a Samira on your team, you want to be playing something like Alistar or Recon are the easiest ones for Samira to follow up on. But she can, it's pretty much anything Yasuo can follow up on, she can follow up on. So like even something like a Thresh Flay or like a Nautilus hook when they bounce off each other and stuff like that counts as airborne for that split second. So really good Samiras will be able to take advantage of that. Other ones, will miss those opportunities. But she'll still be pretty good. Seraphine, probably not going to matter that much. I have seen her getting some play and some high elo because she has a really long range engage ult, and if she chains that together with her empowered E, like, it can be really good. So I don't know, maybe she's like, I think I have her as an honorable mention. She could be like tier 3, maybe even tier 2 if you're really good on her, but we'll see. Talia, probably not going to be that great in the jungle, but maybe. Twitch is going to be a lot better, so they're buffing up a lot of the ADC items as well with this. So I think Twitch, plus some kind of hyper-scaling support like a Janna or a Lulu with an Ardent Sensor actually has the potential to be quite good on this patch. Yasuo and Yone, not going to matter. Rengar, big buff for jungle Rengar, so you might see him a little bit more. Assassins in general are going to be stronger in the jungle, like Kha'Zix, Rengar, stuff like that, because they are nerfing the tanks with Sunfire. Sunfire nerf. Warwick, probably not going to matter that much. Talon, probably not going to matter. Wukong, not going to matter. Items, Collector, not going to matter. Muramana, only for like all caps builds that we're building this on mages. Gensu's, that's getting rid of some loopholes. I don't remember which champions. I think Tryndamere was maybe abusing this with some builds. I know Ashe was, but they hotfixed that really early on in the preseason, but it's going to work as intended now. Now, Zeke's is a big one that's going to affect a lot of champions. It's basically less tanky. You're losing, you're gaining, I guess, what on average here, 50 on-hit damage versus this is going to be like 37 or 38. So you're gaining like maybe 12 or 13 on-hit damage, but it lasts for 8 seconds now. And in exchange for that, you're losing 5 armor and 50 health. So you're losing like 200 gold stats in order to gain like 300 plus gold worth of on-hit. So it's cost positive for you. You're gaining on it, and it's more offense and less defense. And the 8 seconds is a very, very big deal, especially for champions that have pretty long cooldown things, like Rakan, for example, or even Janna with her ult. If she blows everybody back, that counts as a displacement, and it'll put the Zeke's debuff on all of them for 8 seconds. So there's some really good synergies with specific champions on this. And then it's just probably going to be better in general on stuff like Nautilus, Leona, and things like that. Arm Guard getting a nerf, so AD champs are going to be a bit better in the mid lane. This is like a nerf to Yi and maybe a couple of other like really fast attacking champions. Now the support items, these are the big ones that are going to help define the meta here. Mandate is a huge buff for standard use. So all of the mythics are 200 gold less, which is a big deal, for supports. It's because right now you can really only complete like 2 items in most games, and I think in the past it was like you'd get 2 to 3, and now it's 1 to 2 completed items, not including your ward item and your boots. So this is gonna be really nice. And then they also made the Ardent Sensor and Staff of Flowing Water build out of 2 Amp Tomes instead of Blasting Wand, although the cost is the same. So this may not seem like a really big deal, but it really is. Like being able to buy Amp Tomes on your backs, just get an Amp Tome and a Control Ward, or Amp Tome plus boots or whatever. Like it's very, very nice. This is going to be a huge buff in sort of timing windows and back timings for people who want to get these items. And I think a lot of Enchanter builds are just going to be Mandate into Staff of Flowing Water, and whoever does that the best is going to be at the top of the charts, I think, for good play. But they are nerfing Mandate, so sort of. They're changing Mandate to where it's a big nerf for champions that were like part of this like meme build brigade with Mandate, where you had like Cassiopeia mid, Ryze mid, and then people even started trying to play like Ashe bottom with this, because it was doing 60 on-hit damage every attack, every time you slow, and I believe your abilities as well. So like spamming your W would apply this to a lot of different people, because the Mandate, it doesn't go on cooldown unless your ally triggers it for the bonus damage. So if you are a mid lane Cassiopeia and you've got Rylai's, every single E is basically would have been doing an extra like 80 damage. And this also made Ashe's attacks similarly do about 80 extra on-hit damage per attack. But now they're nerfing it to where it's only 36 for the first trigger, but then it's much higher for the second trigger. So in normal use, that's not like all caps builds, This is actually a slight buff in damage if your ally follows up, but it should be much weaker, almost 50%, not quite, probably like 40-something percent damage loss on that initial hit. So maybe people will still try the Ashe support with Imperial Mandate, but I don't know. I'm not a huge fan. Or people are even playing like Ashe 80 carry with this, like Mandate into Runins and stuff like that, because Runins can apply it to multiple targets as well. So it's kind of like a cheaper Blade of the Ruined King. I think Blade does more damage, but the thing, like, Ashe has no AP ratios. That's why I didn't like this. I mean, I guess she's got one on her ult. She's got 100% on her ult. But AP, like, everything is a wasted stat. You're pretty much paying the entire thing just to get, 60 on-hit damage. I guess you do get the health, which is kind of beneficial, and you do get the CDR, which is nice. So I guess you're getting about 3,000 gold technically worth of stats, but some of that is just, like, health and CDR. Like, it's not attack speed or AD. So I don't know. I was skeptical of this, and when you looked it up, at least for ADC, I don't even know if there was enough support data to find anything with it. But last time I checked, it was like 1 or 2% lower than like normal builds, even though like Sneaky and some other people were trying to like really popularize this build. Yeah, it's 48%, 48.5%, right? Versus if you just did Kraken or Shield Bow, it was going to be a 3% higher win rate. So don't let the all caps videos fool you. It's interesting, but those people, they're trying to give you some interesting stuff to play with and to think about, but they're also trying to get clicks, right? They don't always, their goal is not always to give you the highest win percentage, advice they can give you, right? The goal is to, get you to click on it, think, hey, that's interesting, give them a view, and, maybe go try it out yourself and, have a for fun build. So I don't know. I don't mean to be a hater or anything like that. And I like the idea of some of these cool builds that people come up with, but I always try to be honest with you guys because I think that's one thing that people like about my channel is I don't try to clickbait it. I don't try to all caps it. I try to be honest. And if something's legit, if it's weird but it's good and I think it's legit, then I'll tell you about it. But otherwise, I just have to be honest with you that it doesn't, it's cool, but I think you're paying too much for it. It just doesn't have enough other good things, and the percentages weigh that out. Now, win percentage is not always everything, right? I mean, there could be certain situations where it's really good, and there are some champs with lower win rates that are actually quite good. Like Recon, for example, I think has like a 48% win rate, but I think he's super good if you're really good on him. But anyways, they did nerf that aspect of Mandate. Moonstone got a huge nerf. It's about like 125 max healing instead of 150, so that's a lot. It's like 17% less overall healing, so that's the one that got hit the hardest. So it's 200 gold less, which is good, but it's paying a heavier price for that than other builds. You lose a little bit of shield off of Locket for 200 gold. I think this is probably about neutral, just because that shield decays and you lose a lot of it anyways. And then Shurelias was already like the worst mythic, I think, statistically. It was kind of close to Moonstone in terms of like win rates, but now it is cheaper, which is good, but they are nerfing it a little bit. It's not that much. It's basically 15 damage per ally when this comes through. So I don't know, maybe this will open up if this is cheaper and you can get something like a redemption to follow this up, and then run something like Ingenious Hunter to get the cooldowns. Like maybe there are certain builds where this could be good, but I see a lot of challengers like getting this from time to time, and it just like even win rate, like now there aren't many challengers playing, but even win rate like for challengers supports, if we look at something like Recon, for example, it's not like a huge sample size, but I guess it is stronger in challenger. Last time I looked, it was not, but it's like nobody's playing right now. It's like 300 games. So I guess it is somewhat situational, but I don't know. I'm a little skeptical of that item. It requires really good usage and coordination with your team to get the most out of it. And then we'll move on and start talking about this. We'll talk about the rest in terms of like ADCs and all that stuff. It was a long patch notes video, but those are just the support items to line it up with. And the TLDR, as far as like these items, are I think Caitlyn and Jinx are going to be a lot stronger. And in general, most crit champions, there's going to be some toy for them to play with. Gale Force is the huge buff, so I think Caitlyn and Jinx can probably use that the best. then Essence Reaver is also going to be better, and like Rapid Fire Cannon is a huge buff, and Phantom Dancer is a huge buff. So a lot of different champs can make good use of that. But let's move on and start talking about support. So as far as Rel goes, her numbers are just too low. I feel like, it's only 540 health. Yes, she can steal some stats. Armor's 35. So they're okay. She steals 5 in the early game stats from each person that she hits. Her damage, it can go up to 210 on the Q with a 5-second cooldown. It does heal you for a very small amount. It has a cast time, so people can dodge it. But I think this is the biggest thing, is it's an 11-second cooldown on her form change, and it feels like the best thing you can be doing with her is charging it on the horse, engaging, flipping him over your shoulder, and then jumping off, going in your melee to get one extra stun and to be tankier and get that shield, and then try to stick to him, with like your R or something like that. But it takes too long to shift back and forth between forms. Like, I don't understand why they're doing this, because like Elise can do it in 6 seconds. I think that Jace is 6 seconds. Udyr is somewhere around 6 seconds. Like, all of these other form shift champions are like 6. I think Nidalee's like 6 seconds. All of them are like 6 seconds or less. So I don't know why it's a flat 11, or it at least can't be leveled down. So I wish you could at least put points in this to get it down to 6. So, because if she can't do both of these forms, it just seems like she's going to be really weak. She's too slow, I think, in the foot form, and then in the other form, maybe she just has to stay in that other form, but durable armor, yeah, because she has to transform to get the 1 second stun, I think. Yeah, gains this speed, because she doesn't get any of her CC unless she transforms. So unless she jumps off, or unless she just transforms into a knight and charges, she doesn't get that CC. So I don't know. It's okay. And then like this is like 18 seconds for like her stun, for the attract repel. It just feels like it's not quite there. This magnetic overload, someone can actually they can still attack and use abilities. They can even use movement abilities. Like Vayne can just tumble out of this. Lucian can just dash out of it, even if they're already caught in it. So it just feels like it's just a really weird, new form of CC where there's just a ton of counterplay to it. So we'll see. Maybe she'll be better than I think she is, and I hate to, discourage people from playing the new champ. Go out and play her, have some fun. We'll probably try her out on stream at some point, but if you're expecting to win a lot of games, I don't think it's going to happen early. I could be wrong about this, but to me, it just feels like she's a peeler tank with really long cooldowns and just like not enough payoff. Kind of like a Tahm Kench or a Braum or something like that. But we'll see. Other things to keep in mind. Yeah, I talked about all of these. The Zeke's buff, cheaper support mythics, Kate and Jinx probably a lot stronger, and then tanks are weaker, which means you'll probably see more Kha'Zix Graves and Kayn out of the jungle. So you want to plan accordingly. So I think the biggest winners on this patch are going to be Janna, Rakan, and Nami, and then the biggest losers I think will be Pantheon, Zyra, and Brand. Okay. So I think Janna's going to be number 1 on this patch. She's already like really strong. So she has the highest win rate of mainstream supports at Platinum. And everything about this is going to get better. She's one of the best mandate abusers because she has 3 different things that can trigger it, 2 of which are AoE. So she has her W, which is a low cooldown. She can just spam that in lane. It has effectively like about 600 range. It's really weird. Like, it doesn't say the specific range. It's like from edge to edge of hitboxes. But it's usually about as much or a little bit further than most AD carries, except for like Ashe, Caitlyn, Senna. Like the really long range AD carries can outrange her. But for most of them, she can walk up and pretty safely put a W on them whenever they try to auto attack minions. So she has quite a bit of harass in the laning phase. Her W also applies the mandate. Her tornado applies mandate, and even her ult, when she pushes people back, that will put mandate on them because it counts as a displacement. So really good harass early, really fast. She can rotate around the map really well with her W. If you take Relentless Hunter, you might even be able to get away without getting boots, or at least just staying with brown boots, which saves you a lot of gold. So especially with this discount, right, where it's 200 gold less on mandate, if you can also save 600 on boots, that's going to give you an extra third of an item, and that might actually let you complete a third item in many games now. So that's pretty big. And then she also wants to be getting either Ardent Censer or Staff of Flowing Water, so now she's going to benefit from just the Forbidden Idol double Amp Tome, especially on that second item slot is going to be very, very good when the item efficiency doesn't matter. That kind of thing, like later on, Blasting Wand might be better if it's like your fifth total item or whatever, and you need to keep one slot for control wards. Having a Blasting Wand is actually going to be better than having an Amp Tome there. So really late game, that might be a slight nerf to the build, but early on when you have those open slots, I think that it's going to be way better, especially at second and third item. So it's just going to help her be a lot stronger. Also, the types of champions that are coming into the meta hugely benefit from Janna because she puts out the extra usually it's about 50 AD off of her shield. So anyone that has crit, the critical strike takes that AD into account. So if someone crits, that 50, effective, on hit damage of sorts is also going to be doing an extra, 50% or more damage. So, or I guess 175% of the total damage, but it's good. And it also works with AD caster type of champion. So it works really well with Jhin because of his ultimate. You can put the shield on to have the ult hit harder, to have his grenade hit harder. You can do it with Misfortune to have her ultimate hit harder, or Zed, or Graves, or just any of these other AD type of champions. It's just really, really helpful to have that extra like BF sword that you can just put into their inventory anytime you want, and it shields them. So a lot of people forget that aspect of Janna, that she contributes quite a lot of damage to fights through that shield, but it just never gets, you never get any credit for it. So, the fact that, like I said, she has good pressure in lane, really good roaming later on, excellent peel, excellent scaling with her shield and her ult, excellent synergy with some of the new item buffs, and excellent synergy with some of the champions that are going to be coming up in the meta, like these Gale Force users, the Crit, the Jinx, or the Kate, the Jinx, most likely. Jhin might switch over to Gale Force with Crit a little bit more and just do like Gale Force and Executioners or something like that. So she just fits in really good with everything. The only thing, and she has pretty good game against engaged champs, so like Leona, Nautilus, stuff like that, because she can disrupt them. It can be a little bit tough if you're playing against like a Zyra or a Brand or some other like really heavy poke champion early, because your shield's on a long cooldown and you don't have any kind of heal. So you can't like retroactively, bring yourself up. You have to be proactive with the shield. But overall, I think she's still going to be extremely good on this patch. And the other knock is you can't start fights really well. So if no one on your team can start a fight, it can be really awkward. But if you have split pushing or assassins or whatever, and you can give them really good vision, then it may not matter because you can just rotate around the map, get good vision, and just make plays that way. So the fact that she can't engage is kind of rough. She's one of the only top tier champs that can engage comfortably. But nevertheless, I think most of her kit is going to be really strong. Recon's the other one that, I think is going to be super strong, and he's going to benefit a lot from this. Now, his win rate is going to be a lot lower than many of the other ones. So his win rate right now is at 48.5. But I think a lot of that is because he's very hard to play, and his decisions are just really tricky for a lot of players who aren't used to playing him, because it's very easy to bait yourself into overstaying and trying to tag one or two, too many people, right? And then you just get caught out and blown up. So you have to be very careful with it. I think Leona and Nautilus are going to fall off a little bit. Maybe. We'll see. Nautilus, I think, will be strong. Leona's already fallen 1 or 2%. But he can win those matchups. A lot of people think that if they have a lot of CC, if they play one of those tanks with a lot of CC, that he's not going to be as strong. But I think that you can still make it work. Now, the thing that I like about Recon is he is also a really good user of Mandate, as he can trigger it on multiple people off of his ult, and he can trigger it off of his W. He benefits super heavily from AP, and people forget that about him. Like, his shield has like a 1.6 AP ratio with a 280 base off of both shields. His passive, has a 0.9 ratio. His Q has a 0.7 on the heal and a 0.6 on the damage. So he brings like really, really good AP ratios. So very good shielding, very good protection against assassins. I think he's one of the best in the game because not only does he have really good guaranteed CC that's very hard to outplay, right? Like Zed goes on your AD carry, you press R and then shield onto him, and Zed's automatically going to be charmed when he wakes up. It's just a nightmare for assassins to try to deal with him because guaranteed CC, big shields with Guardian to help your AD carry or whoever else survive, then you personally can build some semi-tanky items like Zeke's if you want to stay alive through that. So very, very good build options, very good engage. That is something that Janna does lack. Not quite the same level of scaling just because they don't have the extra AD that Janna does, but nevertheless, very good AP ratios on the shield. So he also loves Staff of Flowing Water because of the AP ratio, and he gets the movement speed. So whenever he goes in with his R plus W, knocks somebody up, he gets that extra 2% movement speed. And if you take Font of Life, anyone on your team that auto-attacks that person you just CC'd is going to get the Staff of Flowing Water or the Ardent Sensor buff as well. So really good build paths. I think the Zeke's is huge on him. The Zeke's buff, Mandate buff, and the buff to the Ardent Sensor and Staff of Flowing Water. He loves all of that. So I think that he is going to be really strong right now, but you got to practice him. You got to be efficient on him. But I think that he's definitely going to move up a couple of percentage points on this one. Bard's another one who I wasn't sure at the beginning of the preseason because I thought that, you know, the items were just so strong that you would want a champion that synergized really well with a lot of the different items. And with him losing Athene's, I thought that was going to be a huge hit to him. And it doesn't feel good, but because people are only able to get like one or two items in most games, that means that his like baseline effectiveness is super impactful because he doesn't need a lot of items, right? Your ult doesn't do any damage, your E doesn't do any damage, right? But it brings a lot of utility to your team. So he is a very good mandate user because every time he auto attacks, it does an AoE cone slow, which applies the mandate to people, and then he can still do something like Redemption or even Staff of Flowing Water just to bring a bit more utility to the team. Zeke's is a little awkward. You probably don't want to do that on him. But, I mean, they did extend the timer on it. So now if you ult somebody, I believe, I'd have to test this out, but I believe if you ult somebody, then they will wake up after 2.5 seconds with still 5.5 seconds of Zeke's on him. So that could actually be a pretty viable item on him, maybe, if it does work that way. I'll still have to test it and see. But yeah, really good long-range engage, excellent roaming, like decent sustain in the lane if you take some bad trades. So there's tons and tons of utility with that ultimate if you use it correctly. So I think Bard's going to continue to be pretty strong. Nautilus is another one that I have up here, and Nautilus's win rate is a bit lower than someone like a Leona, but I just like the consistency of Nautilus, right? He has a huge hitbox on his hook, so it's a lot harder for the enemy to outplay that. It's just, you know, a huge hitbox. They don't have a flash or a dash. It's almost impossible to miss it. And then you can hook your own towers or terrain or whatever to get away from hot situations, so he kind of has a bit of an escape. You have your, you know, press R, no way to outplay it outside of like Hourglass, piece of CC, and then he also has his AoE slow, you know, which can trigger Font of Life and all kinds of other good things for your team. Now, his auto attacks also apply a root, and so that makes Zeke's really good on him. I mean, Zeke's is good on Leona as well, but because most of his abilities and even his auto attacks themselves can reapply the Zeke's, I think makes him really good with that item. Now, I don't think you're going to go Mandate on him. It's possible that maybe you do want to go Mandate on him, just because his AoE slow is going to apply it, you know, every time. He does have AP ratios. He does like health. I think you probably still want to go Locket most of the time. And Locket is pretty good. Oh, are we still in Challenger? Oops. Why did I go back to Challenger? Okay. So he's come up a little bit. I thought he was at 48 or 49%. Yeah, Mandate's low-key, like, very strong on him. It's a 59% win rate versus Locket being 53, and Mandate is getting that buff. And once again, it's because your slow is AoE and you can apply it to a lot of people. So you have to be a little careful with that because obviously you can get blown up if you're doing that type of build, but it is basically the same health as Locket is, except you get the AP on it. It's the same ability haste. You are losing the armor, the magic resist, you know, all of that kind of stuff. So, you know, you got to be a little careful with that. But he does have decent AP ratios, you know. I think his Q is like a 0.9. His ult's like a 0.8 or something. And just AoE spam with your E. The mana regen's also pretty huge because he can definitely have some mana problems later on. So if you do end up going for Mandate plus Zeke's, that's a lot of buffs for your team. So you might have to get a defensive boot or, you know, opt for some more defensive runes potentially. Just find some way to sneak in some extra defense if you go for Mandate, but it could be really good, and the stats are definitely bearing that out here now. It is a much smaller sample size, but 1,400 games, I mean, that's not nothing. That's still a decent sample size, and that much of a difference is pretty big, so that is an option, although, once again, Locket might be good. I would not get Sunfire. That's getting, like, really nerfed on this pack, so do not get Sunfire on any support tanks. 100% you need to be going something else, either Locket or Shurelias or Mandate if you can. Nautilus is really the only tank I would do that on just because he does have a spammable AoE slow and pretty good AP ratios, which makes him somewhat unique to a lot of the other mainstream tanks. Someone like Maokai could go for Mandate as well, and he usually does. Okay, and then you have Nami. Now, I tried Nami, and it can feel kind of bad if they have a lot of mobility and assassins and things like that, because her escapes really aren't that great, and she is pretty vulnerable. But nevertheless, I mean, she's got an impressive win rate. Last time I looked, at least. Where is she sitting these days? 52. It's still pretty good. Her E does apply. Now, I think you have to E yourself and auto attack to apply the Mandate. I think if you E someone else, it will not count. I know the damage does not count as being from you. The E proc damage on other people. But nevertheless, I think that she could be pretty good. Specifically with, like, Lucian, because they are buffing up Essence Reaver, and so if you start to see more Lucian come in, then she's good with him because whenever he does his double attack, she can put the E on him, and it's immediately going to do 2 procs of that, so it's really good synergy with his kit in general, and then once they apply that slow, you can hit him with the bubble and the ult. So overall, I think that she will be pretty solid. It's just going to be a Zeke's and then Staff of Flowing Water probably, and just Airy, Scorch, you know, that type of stuff. So she does bring a lot more hard CC, but you have to hit the bubble. You have to hit the skill shot. So someone like Janna, it's harder to get really long pieces of CC. You have like your tornado, you have your ult and stuff like that, but there's not like that, you know, 1.5 seconds of just like they can't move, right? And that's something that Nami brings to the table. Very, very good trading. I mean, she's the queen of trades, or certainly one of them in the early game. You just walk up, point, click, W on them. It, you know, hits them for the damage and then bounces back to you. And so you're pretty much going to win every trade against someone like a Janna or a Lulu, as long as they don't have an all-in that can threaten you. All-in is a bit tricky because the bubble is not a line skill shot. So, like, unlike Janna's tornado, which can just kind of knock people up, you know, while they're coming at you, you have to actually land it in that specific spot. So in other words, if they're like, Nautilus can go under it, or Leona can go under your bubble without getting hit if they lash onto you. So it is a bit tougher against some of those all-in champs, but she does have a pretty good game against enchanters, and especially against someone like a Janna. If Janna is like positioning to try to knock somebody, or to try to knock everyone back with their ult, you can throw the wave and interrupt it. You can also interrupt things like Jin channeling his ult with your ult. You can interrupt Misfortune. There's a lot of things you can do with that wave, although it is pretty slow, so you have to, you know, really anticipate. But yeah, she'd be solid. And then I think that Leona is still going to be good. I personally feel like Leona is just really risky because you have to go all the way in. And if you get counter ganked, or if you're just behind, it can just feel almost worthless. You do have really good CC. She has a very short cooldown on her ult, so 90 seconds instead of Nautilus' 120. But she doesn't have the option to use the new Mandate like Nautilus does. her E is a much more slender hitbox, and it's a much shorter range, so it's a lot harder to hit her E than other people. Now, it can go through minions, and it can go through enemies, so that you can definitely get to that back line, which is nice. But I don't know. It just feels like she's just not quite as consistent. They can flash your ult, or they can dash out of your ult. They're not doing that with Nautilus's ult. Now, Nautilus can't go over walls, and Leona can like sneak up and engage on people over walls and things like that. So, they both have their perks, but I would tend to favor Nautilus right now. The win rates aren't quite there, but I think that people just don't make use of Nautilus's full kit as well as they could, right? They might be ulting the wrong person. They may not be using their hook to get away. They may not be itemizing correctly. So I think that's a lot more player error than Leona's kit just being stronger than Nautilus's kit. They're both. Leona probably does more damage early. I know she has more armor and all that stuff, but I don't know. She's okay. And then Yuumi, I think it's kind of a tough call on Yuumi. The thing is, like, she's so good on hyperscalers if you get ahead. So even if you shut her down early in lane, if she can just attach to anyone that's like one of these bruiser hyperscaler things, like a Kane with Yuumi or Graves with Yuumi and things like that, it can be really rough. Very difficult to deal with. And, kind of like what I was talking about with Janna and Recon, just a lot of her toys got big buffs because she loves to go Staff of Flowing Water. She loves to go Ardent Censer. She doesn't have to buy boots. So sort of like what I was talking about with Janna, that saves you a lot of money. So now that you get to save an extra 200 gold off of getting Mandate or Moonstone, then that might be enough for you to complete that second item, that really high scaling second item. So the Ardent Censer or the Staff of Flowing Water. So I think that she's pretty good. I mean, if you look at these win rates go up, it just starts going off to the moon whenever she starts completing these items, because it just has such good synergy with her kit because she doesn't have to worry about being vulnerable. Now, it looks like Moonstone is 5% higher, 4.5, than Mandate right now. So you probably want to go Moonstone. And I mean, Moonstone, the thing is, it does synergize super well with Ardent and Staff of Flowing Water because they give you the 20% extra healing and shielding. That's another thing that it's like makes those good on Recon because his shield is so big. So versus they have no like effect on Mandate, they don't have nearly as much synergy. And with Mandate, it's hard for you to proc it on multiple targets. You can do it with your ult if you root somebody with your ult, but your Q is only going to put it on one person, so it's a little awkward. Versus Moonstone just works, and you can even poke people in fights. Like when you're trying to run people down, you can even poke them with that Q. To keep reapplying the Moonstone. So I feel like Moonstone is going to be probably a little bit better. Like I said, they did nerf the healing on it, but they also lowered the cost, and they made the Ardent Censer and the Staff a lot more accessible. So I think she'll be pretty good. Classically, extremely good with Twitch. If you can get away with that in lane, that's a super vulnerable lane. But if you can pick that into something like Ezreal, and just like not die, it's off to the races because as Twitch goes invisible, Yuumi's invisible too, and when he shows up in a team fight invisible and she rolls up and she does her ult and roots them all and he just gets to just chain fire, just machine gun everybody down, just absolutely disgusting. So it's a very, very good combo because remember, she gives out that extra attack speed too. It's like 45% attack speed off her W in addition to everything else that she does. So I think she's pretty good. I would watch out for her. I know Jolty's rolling over in his computer chair right now because I'm praising Yuumi, but that champion's scary, man. I hate playing against it. And she got like some pretty big buffs here, I think. Now she's not as good with things like Jhin or Misfortune, just because they don't really care about attack speed that much. I mean, the Misfortune is okay because you can like use your ult, then she uses her ult, and if they don't have flash, they're probably dead. But like, it's not really that good on Jhin. So if we and Caitlyn and stuff's not that good either. So it just kind of depends on what you get. If you get like a Kog'Maw or a Twitch or even a Jinx or something like that, maybe she's pretty good. But it just depends. How hard are you going to get smashed in lane? Right? Like, how aggressive is their lane? So excellent pick into something like Ezreal that just wants to chill and farm and is going to give you a free laning phase, or Kai'Sa. that's going to give you a free laning phase, but just be careful. So, maybe she needs to be tier 3, but I think if she gets rolling, if she gets these items, if she gets Moonstone and then like Staff of Flowing Water, it's on. She's very, very difficult to shut down if there are multiple hyper carries on a team, because even if she gets stuffed in lane, she can just go attach to that fed Kayn, who's 10-0, and Kayn probably still going to be very strong on this patch. He is getting nerfed, but a lot of his competition is also getting nerfed, right? A lot of the other tanks are getting hit really hard with the Sunfire, and Amumu is just basically being deleted from the game, so. Anyways, good. And then Sona is another one where, the buff to Ardent Censer and Staff of Flowing Water is very good on her, but she is very vulnerable to all lands and all engage. So she's classically a pretty good pick into Janna, I think, because you can out-trade her in lane, and if you get to 5v5 team fights, you can outperform her in those as well, but you don't rotate as well and you're not as safe. So she's not as good of a blind pick, but she might be a better counter pick to something like a Janna. Very good with Misfortune because her stun is instant, right? They have to stay in it for a little bit, but Sona's is instant, so that makes it really good setup for like Misfortune or Rumble, any of these, what did the odd one used to call it? The Exodia, the Bronzodia. That's what he called it. It was like a Mumu, Malphite, just all of these like AoE press R champs. She's really good with that crew. So once again, I'm not sure about the Moonstone. It's cheaper, which means you can accelerate and get to that Staff of Flowing Water, which is a massive power spike. That's something that I didn't mention either. Not only do you get more money, that 200, you're going to get to more items eventually, but you're going to get there faster. And that staff is such a massive power spike on these champs at 2 items, the champs that can get it. It's just, it brings like thousands and thousands. I think each buff, if it's 30 AP, which is like, in the middle, when you might actually buy it as a second item when you're like level 10 or something like that, it's like over 1,000 gold average on the buff. And so you can give out like 5,000 extra gold value to your team. Not including the gold value inherent in the item itself. So you can get close to like 7,000, 7,500, something like that gold value off of that item. So it's a massive power spike. So I have her a little bit below Yuumi because she's not as safe. She's going to have to get boots. Yuumi is going to hit it faster than anybody because she doesn't have to get boots. Janna might be able to get away with it if you do Relentless Hunter and max your W first. But Yuumi can definitely get away with no boots. So a thing with Yuumi that I forgot to mention as well is it is very hard to ward with her because you're so vulnerable if you try to go ward. So that is a thing, especially in lower elo brackets. If your team doesn't help you go ward, that can be a situation. So, that is a little bit of a knock against her versus someone like Janna who can go up and safely ward because she's going to be able to get out of most situations with her tornado, her ult, speed, all that kind of stuff. Okay. So Sona, still pretty good. Excellent team fighter. I just think that Yuumi is a better version of Sona right now. Sona has more pressure and more consistency in the laning phase, but later on Yuumi is going to be much safer and she's going to get away with a greedier build with no boots, and she's going to be much harder to take down. Okay, then I still have Zyra and Brand. Yes, I do think they indirectly got nerfed because everyone else got buffed because they can't really use a lot of these mythic items. I guess maybe Zyra can still use Mandate. I've tried it. It really doesn't feel that good. But I don't know. Maybe she can try Mandate out again, like Mandate into Void Staff or Demonic Embrace or something like that. But they still can take over games early. If we still keep seeing the gens, the Misfortunes, Draven, Ashe is very good with Ashe. So I think there are a lot of good combinations with her, and you can blow people up. There are probably going to be less tanks, more things, like I said, like the Graves, the Caustics, and stuff like that. And if you can get a hold of them with your root, you can blow them up, because usually they don't get very much magic resist. So I think that if you can totally dominate the lane, especially Zyra might be able to get away with Mandate better than, like, Brand. Maybe she's still really good. Maybe she's still good. But, we'll see. And then Brand, he can do a lot of damage. If they have a lot of melee, 2 or 3 melee on their team, and they're going to all be grouped up, Then maybe like Brand with his ult can be good. He still has great poke and great all in if you land your spells in the landing phase, but it's just going to be a bit tougher just because you didn't get any buffs on your major items and you don't use Mandate as well as Zyra does. And then the last ones that I'll mention here, just really quickly, we've got Lulu. Now, Lulu seems like she, and this might be a little low, maybe Lulu should be like tier 2 or something. She did get some buffs on her Q, but it's not really going to matter. Nevertheless, like, she still does have her W. It got nerfed a few patches ago, but it still gives out like 35% attack speed, I believe. It's like a Lulu Light. Gives you movement speed, 35% attack speed, but can also polymorph for 2.25 seconds, which can be pretty solid. Hi, Rory. What are you doing? What are you doing? You hanging out? Oh, she's hanging out. And she can be very, very good with people like Twitch. Anyone that's going to want Ardent Sensor, Lulu can be pretty good. And, you know, that ultimate is nice. It is great against Grievous Wounds just because it's an infusion of health, so it's not reduced by Grievous Wounds at all, and there's Grievous Wounds everywhere right now, so that is pretty handy. So she has some pretty good game against Assassins as well, so I think you could see her. I just feel like that last round of nerfs, it really did affect her win rate pretty significantly. Like, she had been like 52 or 53% as support. Now she's like 51. But I still think that that she can be pretty solid in the right kind of comp. I'd probably rather play Yumi, but you know, Lulu is going to be you know, much stronger in the laning phase than Yumi is. So it just kind of depends on what you want to do. Then I think that's about all that I want to hit on. Swain, like, you can still catch people, maybe blow them up. Tarek seems like he should be good. If you have a lot of CC, maybe he can be, but I tried him out last patch. It did not feel that great. He can just get kited so much. You just have huge mana problems. Blitzcrank, if you can play him and get a hold of Janna and those types of champs like Nami, then I think he can be very good, but he doesn't have any new toys, and everyone else got new toys, so he's also pretty bad into tanks, and you'll probably continue to see some tanks like Nautilus, Leona, stuff like that. So we'll see, but there are more like Edge of Knights running around. They did nerf lethality on ADC, so maybe you see less Edge of Knights, but it's Edge of Knights, Banshees, Veils, a lot of that kind of stuff running around. So we'll see. I mean, it's kind of always the same story with Blitz. It's like, if you hit your hook every time, you're a god. If you don't, you're worthless. So it just doesn't feel good. And then Soraka, I mean, Soraka does like Ardent Sensor. She does like Staff of Flowing Water. She can actually use Mandate pretty well if you hit your Qs on people consistently. And that does give you the extra movement speed. So, like, when you hit your Q, it gives you extra movement speed. And then if your ally triggers it, you get additional movement speed, so you can run around better. So, I haven't tried Soraka in a while. I mean, maybe you can situationally pick her into Janna, things like that. It's just, she's so heavily dependent on healing. And there's so many Grievous Wounds out there right now. Like, almost every tank rushes Thornmail. So many mages and even supports can just get Forbidden Idol now, that it feels like you're definitely going to get a lot of Soraka hate. So I think they just need to rework Soraka a little bit if they're going to nerf healing that hard. They need to just just make her healing like a split between healing and shielding, like they do with Sona. Something like that I think would be nice, just 50-50. And that would help her out a ton. Okay. And I think that's pretty much going to be it for this patch. Thresh is an interesting one. I always feel like I want to play Thresh, and after playing one or two games of him, I'm just like, oh, God. It's like you're working overtime. Like, you're working so hard to get the same kind of results that other people get for working less. So, we'll see. I mean, the Zeke's is very nice on him because your Flay does trigger it. Locket's pretty good. I don't think he uses Mandate that well. He's actually decent with it. It looks like Shurelias is actually going to be one of the better things, but if you are an expert Thresh player, you know, he can make it work. He's got good peel, good engage with the hook. It just feels like you just have to outplay as Thresh. Like, that's what I think. Like, Nautilus is just so much more consistent. Like, you can't miss your R. You just press R, it works. Most of the time, your hook is like 5 times as wide as Thresh's hook and has no wind up. You just throw it instantly. Or it has a much, much lower wind up. So it just feels like Nautilus is just a far better version of Thresh, in my mind. I mean, he's not as elegant, or eloquent, I should say, or both, or whatever, but, you know, he's just not as stylized. It doesn't look as cool, but he just works. I think he just works better, but Thresh does have the lantern. You know, he's got more utility about it than Nautilus. It's just Nautilus just has so much raw power and so much CC, and is better synergy with, like, you know, OP items like Mandate that I'm just not sure. So if you're good on him, you can make him work, but otherwise, I don't know. And then, you know, the AD champs, the Pikes, the Sennas, that type of stuff, obviously are going to be a lot worse just because their items are expensive. They haven't really been in the meta the whole time, and they aren't getting any buffs. Isn't that right, Rory? Yeah. Yeah. So, anyways, that's going to be it for this video. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to like and subscribe. Check out the rest of the content as well. Like I said, I just released patch notes. I'm also going to release an 80 carry tier list later today, so stay tuned for that. Could be streaming, maybe trying out some of these things, trying out some new builds later tonight around 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So come by, check that out. Very friendly, chill community. And I'll see you next time. Have a good day.